Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Dav Dalid Amud Aleph, starting with the last two lines of Dav Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara has been discussing the maximum height of a crossbeam, a kaira of a mavui is 20 amos. Similarly, when it comes to a sukkah, the maximum height of the sukkah is 20 amos. The Gemara then defines what exactly is considered to be an amma. Abaye said in Rav Nachman, it depends. In regards to Mavui and Sukkah, we define the Amma as 5 tfachim. Whereas when it comes to Kilayim, we define the Amma as 6 tfachim. In other words, according to Abaye and Rav Nachman, we're going L'chumra. Rava now says a different understanding of Rav Nachman, also L'chumra. But he says it's not defined as sometimes measuring 5 tfachim, and then sometimes measuring the Amma as 6 tfachim, but rather as follows. Rava mishmei de Rav Nachman Omar, kol amois be'amo bashisha, ela halalu soichakois v'halalu atzevois. An amma, he said, is always measured with 6 tfachim. Only, sometimes it's measured soichakois, and sometimes it's measured atzevois. What does it mean, soichakois, and what does it mean, atzevois? Soichakois means smiling. When a person smiles, there's his pashtus. There's a widening of the lips. When the person is sad, he's atzuv, then the lips are constrained, and therefore they're tightened. So in a tefach, which is made up of 4 gudolim, the middle size of an average person's thumb, those 4 gudolim, if they're a little bit of a space in between each one, measuring the tefach, that's called a tefach soichakos. A tefach soichak is a little bit wider. If it's a gudal, those 4 gudolim that are tight next to each other, then it's a tefach that's otzuv. So therefore, if the 6 tfachim sometimes is measured soichakos, with a little bit of greater space, and sometimes it's measured atzevos, which is constricted, which is tightened, and which is a smaller space. So it depends, but either way it's going to be l'chumra. Ask the Gemara on the Shita of Abaye's version of Rav Nachman that measures the Amma, sometimes 5 tfachim, sometimes 6 tfachim, as follows. Meisvei, kol Amma she'omru chachamim be'ammo bashisha ubilvad shelo yehu mechuvanos. The Brisa states over here that it's always the Amma measured by 6 tfachim, providing that it's not exactly the same. We're on top of Dav Dalid Amud Aleph. Ask the Gemara, Bishlomo leRava ki hechi de lahavyon halalu soichakois v'halalu atzevois. It's very well according to Rava that Rava says sometimes the Amma is measured with tfachim that are soichakois and sometimes with atzevois. Then we can understand it's always 6 tfachim, the Amma, but depends. Sometimes it's l'chumra, when it's one way or the other, and therefore it's just bilvad shelei mechuvanos, providing they're not exactly the same. Sometimes they're soichakos and sometimes they're atzevois. Elala Abaye kasha, but according to Abaye, who does sometimes say it's measured by 5 tfachim and sometimes it's measured by 6 tfachim, this Bryce is difficult because this Bryce implies that it's 6 tfachim. O malach Abaye will answer, Eimo amos kilayim be'amo bashisha. This Bryce is referring to the Amma of Kilayim, and therefore it's measured with 6 tfachim. And that's what it means over here when it says Bilvad shelo yeh mechuvanos. It doesn't mean providing that they're not always the same. It means providing they're not exact, meaning say do not use them as tfachim that are mitzumtzam, that are atzevois, but rather make them so that they're soichakos. So it will be l'chumra. So it will be Kilayim that's measured with 6 tfachim that are soichakos. Says the Gemara, behold, however, it says in the Sefer the following. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Kol amoy she'omru chachamim b'kilayim be'amos bashisha u'bevash le'o mitzumtzomos. So the very thing that Abaye used to explain the Reisha, the Tanakam, that's exactly how Rabbi Shimon Gamliel explains. He says that the kilayim is measured with 6 tfachim of an amma, and providing that it's not mitzum tzomos, that there's going to be a space, meaning that's going to be soichakos. So how can Abaye then explain that that's what the Tanna Kama means when Reb Shimon Gamliel is coming to say exactly that in the Seifa? Answers, so the Gemara asks, Michlal the Tanna Kama kol amos ke'omar. So it must be that the Tanna Kama, when he says kol amos, it means all of the amos, in all cases, is 6 tfachim measured. And not like the way Abaye explained, that's referring to only kilayim. Or Marloch Abaye will explain as follows. V'lav mi ikar Reb Shimon Gamliel dekoi kavasi. Is it not that Reb Shimon Gamliel is saying like me? Meaning to say that in kilayim we measure with 6 tfachim. Mashma, the other things like sukkah and mavui is measured with 5 tfachim. And those kilayim that we measure with 6 tfachim are dafka those tfachim that are soichakos and not mitzum tzomos. So you see that Reb Shimon Gamliel says like me. If that's the case, he says, Ane da'amrik Reb Shimon Gamliel, I say Reb Shimon Gamliel. So therefore, that which I said in the name of Nachman is the fila sheet of Reb Shimon Gamliel. Says the Gemara, La'abaye vade tanoi. According to Abaye, there's a machlokas tanoim. L'Rava milema tanoi. But to Rava, who says it's a machlokas tanoim? Omar loch Rava will say to you, Reb Shimon Gamliel ha'osu la'ashma'inan, amas kilayim lo yitzamtzem. Reb Shimon Gamliel will come to say that he's not arguing on the Tanna Kama. He can say that he's coming to explain that which we say, that the 6 tfachim amma for kilayim, you should know that it has to be dafka those tfachim that are not mitzum tzomos, but are soichakos. That's what he meant to come to explain in the Tanna Kama. But he's not arguing on the Tanna Kama. V'leimo amos kilayim lo yinsamtzim. If that's the case, then why doesn't he say that the amos of kilayim are not mitzamtzim? If that's what he's coming to say, why does he have to add other words and say ba'amos bashisha lemutei mai? Why does he come to say that there's amos bashisha? It comes to imply that it comes to exclude other things, that in other places not an amma of bashisha, but an amma maybe of bas chamisha. Lav lemu'ute amas sukkah va'amas mavui. Is it not coming to exclude the amma of sukkah and mavui, which are 5 tfachim? Answers Rava loy lemu'ute amma yesoid va'ama soiviv. It's coming to exclude the 5 tfachim amma of sukkah of yesoid and the 5 tfachim of amma of soivev. These are the things of the mizbeach. Dirshu, as it states in the pasuk describing the measurements of the mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, ve'ela midos hamizbeach ba'amos, and these are the measurements of the mizbeach in Amos. Amma is an amma of a tefach. An amma and a tefach brings you to 6 tfachim, because the amma that we're referring to is 5 tfachim. V'cheik, and the base of the mizbeach ha'amma v'amma rochav, and it has a width of an amma. Ugvula shel svasa saviv zeres ha'echad, and the border and the edge of the saviv going around is a zeres of 1. V'zeh gav ha'mizbeach, and the pasuk concludes, and this is the top of the mizbeach. So now the Gemara will explain each part as being a 5 tfachim type of amma. Chek ha'amma ze yisoid. The chek ha'amma that is referring to in the pasuk is referring to the base of the mizbeach. Again, 5 tfachim. Zeras ha'echad. The amas rachav ze soivev. That refers to the soivev of the mizbeach. Ugvula el svasa saviv. That which it says, the border and the edges that go around, elu hakronos. Those are referring to the horns on the corners of the mizbeach. V'zeh gav hamizbeach, and that which it states, this is the top of the mizbeach, zeh mizbeach hazohov. So that also has a 5 tfachim amma. Rabbi Chia, says the Gemara Vaiter, Bar Ashi Amar Rav. Rabbi Chia, the Bar Ashi name of Rav, says the following: when it comes to shiurin, Chatzitzin umechitzin halach l'Moshe Sinai. Meaning, until now, we've been discussing various shiurim. The 20 amos, again, of the crossbeam of the mavui, the 20 amos maximum height of the sukkah. We defined the amos as being 5 tfachim or 6 tfachim. Comes along Rav and says, you should know shiurim, chatzitzin, umechitzos. These things are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That means that these are not derived from the psukim in the Torah, but rather these were said orally to Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Beginning with shiurin. Shiurin, asked the Gemara, is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's not derived from psukim in the Torah. It says, Doraisahu, Dirsiv, it says in the pasuk, Eretz chita usa'ara. It says in the pasuk, when it comes to Mishabeach, the Shiva minim, it's with the Mishabeach Eretz Yisrael with the Shiva minim, it says Eretz chita usa'ara. The pasuk goes on to say, the Gefen te'ena v'rimoin, Eretz zeis shemen udvash. So these are the Shiva minim that again, that the Eretz Yisrael is praised with. Now the Gemara will explain how each one of the Shiva minim come to explain a shiur. Each part of this pasuk, each one of the fruits is coming to then say another shiur. As follows. Chita likidisnan. Wheat, like the following Mishnah states, Hanichnas lebeis haminoiga, the kelev al kseifa v'sandalav v'tabos b'yodov. A person who enters a house that has nega tzaras, and he enters the house and he's holding on to clothing in his hands or on his shoulders, and his sandalim, his sandals and his rings are in his hands. That means that he's not wearing not his clothes or the sandals or the ring, but rather they're on his hands or on his shoulder. So it states, Hu vehem tamei miyad. They, together with him, are going to be tamei immediately upon entering such a house, because they are coming into the house. But if he's wearing the clothing, then it's tafil to him, and therefore it has to require a shiur of shihiyah, that amount of time that it waits while he's in the house, to make the begadim tamei. As follows: Haya levush kelov, if he's wearing his clothing, v'sandalav b'raglav, and he's wearing his shoes, v'tabo also be'etzbo, and the rings are on his fingers, then hu tamei miyad, he, because he entered, so he becomes tamei immediately. But in regards to the clothing, those articles, those things have a separate shiur. V'hein taharin ad sheyishe b'kedei achilas pras. They remain tar until there's an amount of time where a person will eat a achilas pras, which is half of a loaf, chitin of wheat, v'lo pas sa'arin, which is not going to be barley because it's eaten more quickly when it's wheat. Meisav v'oicha b'lifton, when he's reclining, that also allows him to eat more quickly, and he eats together with a lifton, a little bit of a dip. That shiur, that amount of time, will then make the begadim that he's wearing, the sandalim, as well as the ring, they will make him tamei if he is going to be in the Beis HaMenuga in that amount of time. Sa'ara, the Sa'ara teaches me a different shiur. This Nana states in the Mishnah, Etzam kisa'ara, metame b'mago v'maso, ve'inu metame b'ohel. The shiur of an etzem, the size of a barley, that is only going to metama a person when he comes in contact, physical contact with that size of the bone of a dead person, or if he carries it, that will metame him. But it will not metame, it will not make it into a mimahil, and to make it an oil, whereby if a person or other things are inside of that oil, they do not become tummy as a result. Gefen, the next item on the pasuk, that says Gefen, referring to the grapes. Kedei revis yain lenazir. That's a shiur that how much the nazir has to drink of a revis to be chayiv malchus. When top of daf dalam and beis te'ena, the Torah lists the word te'ena. Another shiur kigrogeres lahoitza Shabbos. The shiur a person is going to be chayiv for hoitza on Shabbos for oichel, for a food item, is the size of a grogeres. that's a dried fig. Rimoin, a pomegranate, is another shear. Kidisnan, it states in the Mishnah, Kol kli balabatim shiurin kerimoinim. Balabais is chas on his kelim. He doesn't want to throw it out chad pa'ami the moment it gets a hole in it. So therefore, if he normally uses it, let's say for seeds, if it gets a small hole in it, he uses it for olives. It gets a olive-sized hole in it, so then he uses it for walnuts. It gets a bigger hole that walnuts are also going to then fall through the hole. He uses it for pomegranates. And it's still considered to be a kli, whereby it's going to mekabel tuma. The moment it has a size of a hole greater than the size of a pomegranate, it loses shem kli, is no longer nechsha of a kli. So the size of a pomegranate is defining whether indeed it's a kli or not. Then the pasuk goes on and say, Eretz zeis shemen. It's a land of shemen. Zeis shemen refers to the olive. Eretz shekos shiurea kizeisim. A land that tells us that all of the shiurim of the Torah are like zeisim, kizayis. Ask the Gemara, kol shiurea salke daitach. Are you going to say all of the shiurim are indeed kizayis? V'ha'iko hani da'amar. Behold, we have those that we just mentioned before that are not kizeisim. Answers the Gemara, Ella Eima Eretz Sheroiv Shiura Kizeisim. It's the land that most of the Shurim are Kizeisim. For example, Chaylev and Dam. When a person eats Chaylev and Dam, the Shir is a Kizayis. When a person comes in contact with a size of a Kizayis of bone, that will be Mahayil. That will make an Oihil, etc. So the size of a Kizayis is the majority of times the shear that we find that gives the item chashivus. The next item on the pasuk says dvash, referring to dates, tmorim. Kikoseves hagaseli makipurim. The size of a person who eats and is going to be considered to be somebody who then is now eating on Yom Kippurim, midiaraisa, that size is a kikoseves hagasa. It's slightly smaller than the size of a kibetza, and that's the size that is midyashev a person's das, because a person is chayiv inui, and that's why he cannot eat on Yom Kippurim. When he eats a koseves hagasa, this amount of a tamar, koseves hagasa, this is going to be the amount that he's going to be chayiv for. So now we're left with the question: how can Rav say that the shiurim are indeed halach l'Moshe miSinai? Here we see indeed that the pasuk is telling us all of the various shiurim. Answers the Gemara with a question: V'tizra shiurin michtav ksivi. Do you think to say that this pasuk is explaining the shiurim? No. Ela hilchas saninu. It's halach l'Moshe miSinai. Ve'asamchinu Rabban Akroi. And the Rabbanan used the pasuk to then be soymech on to explain the shiurim that is halach l'Moshe miSinai.